Hey, Rockstar.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, awesome. Now that we're chatting. So
Love it.
you are going to rip up the stages. So you will not be joining.
Uh,
Chris is always ripping up some kind of microphone. And if you saw her last video, she's got it going on. It was hilarious because Dory's husband was like, "Are these two in a band?
yeah.
Is this video for a band?" And I'm like, "Why would he
Oh,
think that?" And then when
oh,
I looked at the photos and videos, I'm like, "Oh, that's why he would
yeah.
think
Only in our heads. Only in our heads.
we're
But it's so fun to always be getting to do these amazing things. However, it means that I miss Sabrina.
I
I know.
know.
I'm
Let's just
upset.
quickly give a big shout out to Sabrina because,
Oh, amazing.
and when you and I, this is again, you and I, like, there's just some kind of
I
a
know.
going on. I'm doing some kind of whatever, and Chris is like, SOS, you have to have this woman on I Am Unbreakable in the magazine, on the podcast. She's so fantastic. I'm like, sure, because whenever you say
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
I'm like, I've got that trust in you. And you sent me her name. I'm like, already done. You're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
What? And she was actually the first guest I ever interviewed
That's
on
amazing.
I Am Unbreakable. So we are both very sad that we are going to miss you, but we love you to pieces. And I know we'll be chatting about you. And there'll be so much more that we're going to talk about now.
Did I flip
Hold on,
upside
I'm going to
down?
go this way.
Uh,
Maybe it's this way.
I don't know.
That's what I love about live filming. Whatever happens, happens. So
Yeah,
we
it is
will
what it
miss
is.
you, but you go and continue rocking the stage and
I can't wait to hear it. I know it's going to be one of the best for sure.
lots of mic drop moments for you. Thanks.
Amazing. Big
Chat.
love.
Sabrina, welcome back. How are you?
Thanks so much, Adrian. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome. You and I have been trying to do this for a couple of weeks, maybe even months now. You are so crazy busy. You are out there changing the world, being a huge rock star. You know I love you to pieces. And it's so funny. I'm going to let you introduce yourself to our community. So whoever doesn't know who Sabrina is, you're going to now.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Sabrina Fiorellino, CEO of Fero International Inc. We are a volumetric modular building company, largest under one roof in Canada. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you.
And working on modular building throughout the whole country and now starting to expand into the US. So really exciting business, really exciting times for modular and really exciting times for me and the entire Faro team.
I love that. And I'm going to keep dragging you away from the business because everybody wants to know who Sabrina is. But I'm going to just sort of start off like this. So I get, Chris, obviously, everybody who watches I Am Unbreakable knows who Chris is. And she was hilarious. So she's actually going to be now one of the hosts on the I Am Unbreakable podcast. And she's very sad she couldn't be here today, but she says hello. So I get a frantic text from her. OMG, I found our next rock star. You must connect with her. You must connect with her. And I'm like, okay, send me like, who is this? And when I saw your name, I'm like, LOL, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. She starts laughing. She's like, of course you did. But you are rocking stages, you are changing lives, you're changing male dominated industries. And I love you to pieces. You are just such a kind human. I want people to get to know who you are before we dive into how you created this massive business, I guess from your kitchen table essentially during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So, for those founders and entrepreneurs who have a dream or have a vision, Sabrina, you're living proof that you can do it. And again, it's not all hokey pokey, although we are very spiritual and we believe in certain things, you and I, which
Yes.
we may touch on after. But, it takes a lot of hard work and grit. There's no straight paved highway. But I want to talk about you for 30 seconds. So you are incredible. And I want to know, did you ever think when you were young you were going to be where you are today? Because I know you've had quite the journey so far.
Yeah, definitely not. I think there were always people around me who would say things to me like, you're meant for big things. And you're a kid, you don't understand. It kind of goes in one ear and out the other, and you're kind of just doing what you do the best you can under the circumstances you're dealt. And I think one of the things that was most memorable for me was one of my elementary school teachers looked at me and said, "You overachieve because you don't want to deal with the real problems that you have." And
Oh,
it's the truth, and it was always the truth. And I would say sometimes continues to be true, but it was my way of coping with circumstances around me that I didn't really want to cope with or deal with, and didn't have coping mechanisms to deal with or probably fully understand at such a young age.
of course. Oh, wow. You've opened the floodgates now because, I've got a million questions. I love that. And I think even as adults, sometimes we look at our situations, and you and I have had a lot of heart to hearts, and it's kind of like, why? Like, I find human behavior so incredibly interesting. And the fact that, hindsight, you can kind of articulate now, looking at a younger you, you're like, I knew I was going through stuff, didn't know how, but this was my escape. So greatness was your escape. I think we need a t-shirt. Greatness is my escape. So do you want to share a little bit, as much or as little as you want, as you were growing up, what sort of you were escaping from?
Yeah, sure. So grew up with a single mom, an absent dad, and four generations in one house. So I had my mom, me and my brother, my grandparents, and my great grandparents all in the same house. And so tons of positives and tons of negatives because of the intergenerational dynamic. So the good news was there was always somebody there for us. If my mom was working, obviously single mom, she's at the house a lot. So there was someone in the multi-generational family who was around and at least making sure we didn't blow up the house. So that was
Right?
positive.
That's important. That's important.
Yes,
I love
absolutely.
that. And, I love you're saying that because there's so many families now, in the uncertainty that we're in and that we're living in, that that's their norm, right? And I know I was brought up by my grandma, my kids, same. I was a single mom, three kids under the age of four. And you said positives and negatives. And I wonder what your we all, I think, know the positives of having, people that are older. You've got the wisdom, but then you've got the generation gap, right? Where it's like, I wasn't allowed out like ever, or,
Yes.
they just instilled these values that maybe didn't align with the time. So what was your thing that you were sort of dealing with, if you can share?
Yeah, so intergenerational challenges, like someone born in the 1900 has a different opinion of what is tolerable or palatable than someone born in 1950 or 1980 or
Yeah.
further than that. And so it was this sort of push and pull of what's acceptable and what's not in the household, and what the benchmark is, and having to hit it, and that all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge because everybody had different ideas. And as you can imagine, my big fat Greek wedding, it's like my big fat Italian wedding in the house all day, all the time. And so it is a challenge for sure.
I
Or was
love
a
that. And
challenge.
I love the fact that you refer to that because, just so you know, my first wedding was actually at that church where they filmed that movie. And I should have seen the movie first, but, happily remarried now, and, no negative comment. But it's definitely, the movie really puts a funny spin on probably your reality. And now you can kind of look because you're and laugh because you're out of it. And when they say it takes a village, to raise a child, you and I have had this conversation as well. I really do believe that, but I feel like exactly what you said, where there's sort of lines in the sand of like, yeah, that just doesn't happen. I even get it from my kids. They're like, Mom, you're such a boomer. I'm like, first of all, your grandmother's a boomer, but thanks for coming out. And secondly, there is still some really good, like especially European values that we have and that were probably instilled in you, which, as I said, is amazing. But so you continued through school. Your escape was excelling because that was your feel good, your dopamine fix, whatever we want to call it. But wow, that is sort of awesomeness. And when did you realize you were doing that? Like, how old were you when your teacher told you that?
I think I was in grade 7,
Oh,
so
so you
fairly
did
young still.
not
I
understand.
No, it's like the word stuck with me, but what they meant I didn't fully understand it till much later in life.
And so
I
what
kind
does
of,
it mean?
when something sticks in your head and you think about it, but you don't necessarily really understand it, or what it means to you changes over time. And so that was just one conversation that I kept replaying in my head over the years, and started to mean way more probably in my 30s.
What does it mean to you today?
I think it really, so what's really, really important to me and what I talk about really often is resilience, and the importance of resilience as a leader. And it reminds me that even at that young age, without knowing anything, like resilience was ingrained in me naturally, I would say.
I love that. And the book that I've got coming out called Rockstar Rising is all about resilience. And I talk a lot about confidence too, but I think confidence and resilience comes with going through the trenches. Like I always look at, the struggle as the training ground. People are like, "Oh my God, it's hell. I'm in the trenches." Yeah, amazing. Wait till you get through. Wait till you come out. Look at the lessons you've learned. Did you know when you were that age that I learned from everything I get through, or was that not until you were older?
Yeah, probably till I was older. I think, you can take it two ways. You can take a woe is me attitude, which a lot of people take, right? And they just, I would say, negative results in more negative. Or you can take this is happening and it's noise, and yes, I need to work through it, but I need to focus on positive things too. And I think that was just my natural state, like naturally glass half full, luckily, like, lucky. But what it meant really sunk in later, way later.
Love that. And I gotta just sort of add one thing and challenge you on something. Why do you think it has to do with luck? I don't, I gotta be honest with you. I think it has nothing to do with luck. I think it has to do with grit. And I think there's always that fork in the road. And like you said it perfectly. I could be the poor woe is me victim, or I can take the road to, let's go. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be tough. It's shitty where I'm at, having a clue how I'm going to get through, but you just do it. And look at you, you've just done it, right? So I don't know if it has to do with luck, or do you think it has to do with grit, being bold, being brave, hard work? Like that's sort of the way if I had to describe you to somebody, that's how I would describe you.
Yeah, so I say there's always a little bit of luck, but yes, I mean it is a choice. There's a choice to make to be a woe is me or a glass half full person. I think naturally I say I'm lucky because I naturally lean towards glass half full. It's just my baseline personality. Like I am a naturally happy glass half full personality, even in crisis. And so I think that's a little bit of genetic luck, even with a lot of family members who go the opposite way. But it's also a choice I'm making. I'm
Yes.
choosing not to be that woe is me person, even when there's lots of people around me who are. So, bit of combination for sure.
Yeah. And so when you're going through that, I just want to pick your brain here for a second. When you're going through a crisis or a really tough situation, what is your internal dialogue? Because as humans, and I talk about this all the time, we are naturally made to self-soothe, to sit in comfort, to whatever. So we sort of avoid the tough stuff, right? And so, what is your internal dialogue to yourself when you're sitting in the middle of it going, okay, this really sucks. And all I feel like doing is curling in a ball and not thinking about it today. What do you say to yourself?
Yeah, so I go back to, so you have glass half full versus the woe is me type attitude, and then you have fight or flight, like natural reactions of fight or flight. And so I am again naturally a fight glass half full person. And so my dialogue is, oh shoot, like this is could be existential and I need to figure out a way to deal with it. And of course you have moments where you're like, oh man, like this is not going to work. And then you kind of pull yourself back together and say, everybody's looking at me, all eyes are on me, I can't show cracks, I need to dig deeper, as deep as it's going to take, and get this done and figure out a way out of it. And when I look at our company, our slogan is solutions without limits. And so we naturally push that messaging throughout the organization that yes, we know there's challenges every day. The world is hard. There's a tariff war going on, like economy soft, all these type of things. People are getting laid off, like historic food bank lines, all these kind of things are happening. But there's a solution if we dig deep enough, both individually and collectively. And that's what's important. And we need to find solutions and be solutions oriented. So that's sort of my internal dialogue, which then
Give me the
turns external.
goosebumps. Give
Oh,
me the goosebumps because that is so powerful. So if you take anything from this interview, please listen to what you just said because, and what does Lucy say about goosebumps? So it's always like if you feel something very deeply and internally, that's, I think, the angels. I think that's what she says. But
yes, yes,
so, and people know who Lucy is because I've interviewed her as
yeah.
well. But so powerful, so meaningful because you're right. We are in such uncertain times. And, there's always that crossroad. And you're right. You're sitting in the middle of it and you're like, oh, shoot. But you lead with such passion and such purpose. And I feel like people can really take a page from your book from that because everybody, like life is filled with challenges and obstacles. Hence why, I don't know, somewhere I put the struggles part of the story. Like it's just part of your story. Like you never really talk about the stories like, oh, remember when, things were great and rainbows and unicorns and whatever. It was like, remember when I almost lost everything. My house was mortgaged to the max or whatever your people's story is. And then you came through on the other side. Mel Robbins talks about it all the time just before, her amazing books just hit. So, what do you think sets you apart from the woe is me person besides the attitude, besides the mindset? Do you have rituals? Do you have work at like, can you tell us a little bit about what makes you a superhero rock star?
So I think we talked about resilience for sure, but it's also, I think, pushing through fear. I think a lot of people live in perpetual fear all the time, and I believe that all emotions come from two root emotions: fear and love. And so if you lead with the guiding principle of love, and the subsequent emotions from that versus fear and the subsequent emotions from that, I think you do much better. So I think that's super, super important. Of course, we're all scared. Like, you talked about, oh, your job's on the line, your house is on the line. So I recently wrote a chapter in a book about pandemic voices. And one of the things that I talked about is how entrepreneurs are always talked about as the evil doers. But what everybody doesn't see is, like, I personally guaranteed everything. Everything I own is on the line. Every penny I have is in the company. My day in and day out, I think about, I have all these people that I'm responsible for giving them a paycheck, for feeding, for making sure that our, employees, subcontractors, suppliers, and their families are all taken care of. And I will risk everything I have to make sure that they're okay. And that's how we start. And eventually you get out of that and you're like, okay, I don't have to put my house on the line anymore. But that's what entrepreneurs do, to build what they build, to build community, to grow, and then to give back. And I think that piece of the story is lost. It's lost like often in the storytelling about, the entrepreneur became enormous. But how did they start and what did they sacrifice to get there?
And you're so right. And, one of the reasons, I built I Am Unbreakable is for that exact reason, because, I don't even turn on the news. It gives me anxiety, and people, can have their opinion about that. I obviously am very worldly, so I know what's going on, but I don't need it in my face 24/7. People never say, oh, mom, rushed to the hospital and gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. It's always, all the negative, because I hate to say it, that's what sells. And so when you talk about fear, it's the number one dream killer. Right. And, I talk a lot in my book about fear being false evidence appearing real, and coming as a PI, it's like, where's the evidence? Because people actually convince themselves like they're terrified. And, 99% of the time, yes, sure, anything can happen. But 99% of the time, it doesn't. Right. And so they're just paralyzed by this fear. And that's my chapter's called F bombs. I would also say forgiveness, like forgiving, you don't have to go and forgive other people per se, but forgiveness is sort of a selfish act, right? Because who's ever hurt you or done wrong by you, there's also forgiveness. What's your take on forgiveness?
Yeah, so one of the things I say regularly is you can't have a bad day unless you let someone affect you, and then it's your choice to have a bad day. And I think that's intricately connected to forgiveness. If I want to stew in something that somebody did to me, I'm hurting, not that other person. And so it's not self-serving to hold on to hate and, sub emotions of fear versus love and sub emotions of love, because holding on to those feelings only hurts you in the end. That person doesn't even know you're upset or thinking about it or whatever. They're going about their day
Yeah.
happily, and
Yes.
you are literally like inflicting pain on yourself because of a choice that you're making.
150%. And, I learned that very early on. And I'm going to say I actually learned the big lesson from one of my kids, where I was annoyed. I don't even remember what I was annoyed at, but I was annoyed at something. And, my whole day kind of got turned upside down. And then I go pick him up, and a big hug and hi. And I'm like, okay, so you've had a fantastic day. I've been going like cuckoo crazy over this one thing. And I tried to talk to him about it. He's like, oh, that was like yesterday. I'm like, no, but like that happened this morning. He's like, well, it's all good. I love you. And I was kind of like, okay, that is evidence that what you just said, that it's usually a big saying that I always say is, 90% is what happens to you, or sorry, 10% is what happens to you. 10% is how you, oh my gosh. I so fudge this. You get what I mean?
I got it. I got it.
10% is what happens to you. 90% is how you react. So
Yep.
you can't control what happens around you sometimes, right? You
Yeah.
can't. You can put,
Yeah.
barriers. You can get rid of people that are toxic. You can, change situations, but you can't control everything in your life. So I love your take on that. And I
Yeah.
know you and I can talk and talk for hours. I've got three or four more questions, but I want to ask you about failure. So you put everything on the line to do this. And was there a point and time that you were terrified to fail? Like, how did failure come into your life, maybe even from when you were young to now?
Yeah, so yes, I mean, yes, putting everything on the line more than once is terrifying. And of course, you doubt yourself. You have really bad days, things that go wrong, that are on the brink of being existential, right? And you just second guess everything you thought to be true. And I think, the resilience and the leading not with fear helps push through and continue going. And I always use a lot of sports analogies here. Like Michael Jordan will say, I made 10,000 shots that I missed, but I've got the game winning one, and that's what matters. And so I think the importance is like to keep going. You're gonna get told no more than you're gonna get told yes. You're gonna misstep. And I think for me, as I get older, build more, learn more, the failures get more minimal, or the sort of big failures get more minimal. But failure is okay. You learn from it. So long as it's not a catastrophic failure, and you need to understand how not to create catastrophic failures. But failures are good, like especially on research. You want to innovate, you want to push the boundaries, you want to ensure that you make all the mistakes before you launch something new, as an example, and all of that's okay and should be celebrated, with the limitation that you can't have catastrophic failures, obviously.
Exactly. And I love the fact, for me, it's always like it is a stepping stone. If you don't fail, you're not doing anything, wow, right? Like innovation, right? We were living in darkness and somebody decided to create a light bulb. You're fixing, the best businesses are fixing problems, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like when we're in the middle of a failure, I think it's founders really need to understand that there's going to be many times that you have to zig when you thought you were going to zag. Pivoting is like it's good and it's okay, and they have to be open to that, because so many founders are like so set on their passion project, and lots of times they are incredible ideas, but sometimes they have to pivot. What do you think about that? Would you agree?
100% agree. Like this business, the idea I started with has expanded, changed, evolved. You know, it's entirely different from the way I started. But to that point, I believe that we need to disrupt and grow. Otherwise, you die. Like you're disrupting or you're being disrupted. And so if there's no evolution and there's no growth and you're static, eventually it all goes away. It's the Blockbuster Netflix analogy. Like Blockbuster didn't pivot enough when there was a new disruptive technology in place. And so you can't stay static. Your ideas can't stay static ever.
I love that. And the gal from Canva, I think she was turned down just over 100 times. And if she gave up after 10 or 20 or 50 or 100, she wouldn't be one of the most successful founders ever. And so I think pivoting is okay. And I think as an entrepreneur, you really got to get your head around the fact that that is, I know in all of my businesses, I've had to pivot, right? So, just to wrap up, two more quick questions. What is the most important thing to you sort of moving forward? Like, what is it that you want personally?
Oh, so I think we talked about this on the last podcast we did, but it's to have a family. So I talked about sacrifice as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs get a bad name, and what we sacrifice. Like I've put that on hold for so many years to grow businesses, to make sure everybody around me was okay, but put aside my dreams to make sure the collective was good. And so I think as things get to more of a steady state in this business, it's something that I really want to do, have my own family. And I joke around at the office on a regular basis, saying, kids are going to be raised by village in the office, so we're going to have to figure it out. Like, it's not the norm, but it's okay. Like, I believe that we should question everything. Just because there's a market leader in something like Blockbuster was, doesn't mean it's going to remain that way forever. And so maybe the idea of raising kids by village in an office is not the norm, but it doesn't mean it's okay or not an idea that should have consideration. So I try to push the boundaries on everything that we do.
I love that. And don't forget about Auntie Adrian, because they
Yes.
like rotten. Just saying.
Oh, you guys are all in trouble. You, Lucy, Chris.
Right? It'll be
Yes.
like there's Sabrina and like a little mini you all in the same outfit. Anyways, and I hope the best for you, of course, with that. Now, I love the fact that you push the norm, you're innovative, you are a rock star, you're in a male-dominated space. So yeah, now actually I have two questions left for you. What is it like to be a female in such a male-dominated industry?
Terrible. No, I mean, challenging. I'll say challenging. There's a lot of noise. So when I was younger, I used to get personally offended and enraged, and all of these things when people said stuff to me that I thought, they shouldn't say. Now, for me, it's just noise. Like things are going to be said. It is unusual. Like I kind of have to look within and say it's unusual for someone who looks like me to be in heavy duty manufacturing or construction. And so it's something that people have a hard time wrapping their heads around. And now I use it as a funny joke or a talking point or something to engage people in. And so spin it on its head from where it was to what it is. But I focus on the mission. For me, whatever is said, yes, a lot of mean things get said for sure. But it's all noise. It's all noise because the mission's what's important. The team is important. The journey is important. And the rest is nonsense.
It's just outside influences. And I know you and I have that really in common, coming from a complete male dominated industry. I still to this day, if, they've gone on lunch and I pick up the phone, they're like, is this the answering service? No, how can I help? Are you the secretary? No, I'm the owner. Oh, is there a gentleman there? I'm like, probably, but how can I help? Right? It's like, just like silly little things like that, which to your point, I don't really get. It doesn't annoy me anymore. It's just sort of like you said, the norm of what, sadly, of what we still live in, right?
Yes.
But anyways, it's trailblazers like you that are just absolutely doing fantastic things. You're changing the world, you're helping the world and so many people. What does it mean to you to be unbreakable?
Never give up, continuous resilience, and no matter how many times you get told no, to push through, push through.
I love that. I love that. And I love you.
Thank
Big
you.
hugs. Thank you
Thank
so much. We're going to keep doing this. I can't wait for people to read your article. We're going to do a book. And you are an absolute rock star and a mentor to so many up and coming leaders, as well as women that are, shifting what they're doing, any age, any stage. Thank you so much. I so look forward to chatting
Thank you.
again
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you. Thank you.